Welcome to the first speeches and framing seminar. While I'm waiting for more people to join in, I'm gonna cover some best related, debate related news that you might be interested about. Um, First of all, being the second speeches seminar, just the first speeches seminar. And if you're also interested in being a good second speaker, you're welcome to join on the 30th of October with Yanni. We'll be presenting it. Um, and also, we are currently having still the application period for our um, brand new online tournament, the Lynch Cup. If you think you're going to be interested in that, time is kind of running out. The application deadline is on the 13th of October, and uh, places are also running out. So like, make sure to do it as quick as after the seminar if you want to have a chance at participating in the tournament. It's going to be 3 rounds of impromptu and direct eliminations, which means that in order to reach finals, you need to win both rounds, and if you want to qualify for nationals, you need to be the winner in the finals. And yeah, all right. With that said, I'm gonna move on to the seminar. So how this is gonna work is I'm gonna be presenting. At some point, Kati is also gonna join in and gonna present her part of the seminar. If you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat, raise your hand, unmute yourself, and just ask. It's totally fine. There's also gonna be some questions that I'm gonna be answering to you, and I'm gonna be expecting someone like to join in the discussion. With that said, let's move on to the structure of the seminar. First, I'm going to talk about the role of the first speaker in the debate. Then I'm going to move to the elements of the first speech. After that, Kati is going to talk more about framing, which is a thing that we are really going to focus on bringing this year to best and to all debaters to make sure that the framing of the debate is really solid. After that, I'm gonna talk more about how to structure arguments, and at the end, I'm gonna finish it off with some tips and strategies in general for first speakers. With that said, let's move on to the role of the first speaker. One of the most important things that a first speaker should do is to identify the issue. Because we can debate, but we can't debate without knowing what we are debating about. So one of the first things that a team should do is figure out what the issue is that the motion is presenting of the debate. And the job of the first speaker is, once the team has figured that out, to present what they think the issue is. You should find the issue that is the most obvious, the most relevant, and most debatable in the debate. Do not try to find an issue that you think you might be debating easier, but it's not really correlating to the motion. And to kind of exercise that and figure out yourself how to do it, I have 2 motions that we're going to be figuring out the issues to, starting with this house would ban dating apps. We have A, B, and C. The issue in A being, is dating inherently bad? B, do the disadvantages of dating apps outweigh the advantages? And C, can dating apps be beneficial? If anyone wants to join in, raise their hand and say what the correct answer is. You can also type it in the chat. Okay, I'm gonna give you a minute to think about it. Think about what the core of the motion is, what the motion is about. All right, we have someone who raised their hand. Yanni, yes?
I think it's B. Do the disadvantages of dating apps outweigh the advantages?
Exactly. The correct answer is B. C. The answer cannot be A because the motion is about dating apps. So we can debate as the proposition or the opposition that dating is bad in general because it would make no sense regarding the motion. It would just make our job much harder to actually prove. Um, and on side C, it's also just not relevant to the motion of banning dating apps. Um, Even if we can prove that dating is beneficial, it doesn't mean that dating apps should not be banned because of the inherent disadvantages that they might have. And let's try another one similar to this one and see if you can figure out what the issue that the motion is presenting is. We have this house as Bulgaria would leave the European Union. What's the issue that we're going to be debating in this debate once we go to the proposition and opposition? Is it beneficial for Bulgaria to leave the European Union? Is it beneficial for the European Union if Bulgaria leaves it? Or is the European Union financially stable? We have someone raising their hand. Georgi, yes?
It's A, I think.
Exactly, it is A. Um, It's A because in this motion we have this house as Bulgaria. So this house is defined as Bulgaria. Therefore, we are looking at what's the interest of Bulgaria. B cannot work because it's not in the interest in Bulgaria whether it is beneficial or not beneficial for the EU. The opposition might debate that it's not good for the EU for Bulgaria to be in the European Union, but as long as it is for Bulgaria to be in the European Union, then they don't have an argument that would really count in the debate. It's usually finding the issue in a debate is not easy, especially for novice debaters, but the more you debate and the more motions you get to know about, it's easier to actually figure out the issue. So with that, we're going to move to another point, another role of the first speaker, and that's to actually present your issue. Once you have figured it out, you have to present it using your arguments, your definitions, and all the other elements that we're going to talk about now. So here are the main elements that the first speech might have. It's the roadmap, definition, stakeholders, status quo, burden of proof, model, and arguments. Now, that's a lot of words, a lot of terms, and probably a lot of them are unknown to you, but don't worry. We're gonna clear them up very quick. What I have to say is that all these elements are what create your case. Your case is the way you approach the motion, whether you're from side proposition or opposition. Once you have found the issue, your case is the way that you're dealing with the issue. And when we have all those elements, it's not really important for every debate to and every first speaker speech to have all those elements. For example, not every speech would need to have a model in it. In fact, the only elements that are really needed in every first speech in order to be a functional first speech is the definition, the burden of proof, and the arguments. So let's move on and talk about more about what those elements mean. But first, do you have any questions? If you do, you can also write them in the chat. You can unmute yourself simply. It's totally fine. And I'm gonna get back to them once I see them. So, starting with the roadmap. The roadmap is not really a content-based element in the sense that you're just telling me what you have to do, and then I want you to do it. So the roadmap basically entails you going, now I'm going to present the definition, the status quo, framing, other elements, then I'm going to present the arguments, and you can also provide a quick highlight of the arguments. The reason why giving a roadmap is important is because it, one, helps you stay present in the debate, But second, it helps me because it's much more easier for me once I know what you're gonna do in the speech to actually follow you do it instead of just having to listen to a messy speech and have to figure out everything by myself as the judge. And also, roadmaps should be no longer than 15 to 30 seconds, as roadmaps need to incite attention in the judge and want to hear more about your case. If you give me a roadmap that's a minute or even longer, then I'm gonna get bored and I'm gonna start just waiting for the actual elements of your debate to happen. So, once you have presented the roadmap, an important thing that you have to present too is the definition. The reason why you need to have a definition is because once you have found your issue of the debate and you want to present it, you have to tell me how you interpret the motion. The definition helps you get a specific and precise meaning of the motion that you're going to be using throughout the whole debate, and it's going to help you base your arguments and your whole case approach in future speeches. Definitions are not there just for the sake of it. Some novice debaters or amateur debaters would sometimes just try to have a definition just so they can have one. But it's really important to think about your definition because it's your chance to explain what your team understands the motion to mean, how you see it through your viewpoint. That's why it's also important to not make definitions too complicated, as you want the other team to actually know what you're talking about, and you want the judge to be sure that you know what you're talking about. For example, it's also kind of bad to use dictionary definitions, because the dictionary was not written with the motion in mind, and if you're trying to explain the motion and what the terms mean in the context of the motion, then a dictionary might not be that useful. It might be good to refer to a dictionary if you want to determine the meaning of a word that you don't know about, but use your own understanding of the term when you're giving the definition. Also, a good definition will always be neutral. If you're trying to skew it a bit on your side, this unfair definition might sometimes set up the debate for undebatable arguments, and therefore the opposition has the right to challenge the definition and possibly have the definition that they've chosen be counted against yours. My dictionary left its red scarf at home. That's good. Moving on. Now, this is an element of the debate and of first speeches that Kachi is going to talk more about during framing. But the stakeholders are basically, to know what your stakeholders are in a debate, you have to answer the question, who is directly affected by the motion? For example, when we go back to the, this house as Bulgaria would leave the EU, we can have our stakeholders be the Bulgarian citizens, considering it's in their interest whether their country is in the EU or not. The status quo is another element that Kachi is going to talk more about after, but in simplest terms, it's the situation at present in the real world. Debates often call for connecting stuff that you're talking about to the real world so we can know that they're going to be functional, and it's very important to talk about how things are now. So, for example, the motion with Bulgaria, you're just going to say that currently Bulgaria is a part of the European Union. That's the status quo. Now, moving on to another very important element, the burden of proof. The burden of proof is usually a sentence that you provide, and if you prove it, technically you win the debate. But it's not that simple. In the simplest terms, though, the burden is trying to present the big picture of your case. Arguments are just individual reasons as to why you should win the debate, but the burden is the main reason why and your main point that you're trying to present with your case. And finally, a good burden has to explain why and how a motion is true. So in order to kind of see it more in action, I'm going to be giving you some examples of motions and potential burdens of proof. And your task is to tell me whether you think this is a good burden or a bad burden based on the criteria that I explained just now. So, starting with the first one, this house believes that internet piracy has done more good than harm. A proposition burden of proof might be: we believe that by providing global access to all users, regardless of their ability to afford content, piracy has done more good than harm. Now, do you think this is a good burden of proof or a bad burden of proof? You can even write a simple yes or no in the comments. Yes, Koyan has raised his hand.
I think that that's a good burden of proof.
Okay, we also have a comment that it's bad. Well, in this presentation it's put as a good burden of proof, considering it provides why and how the motion would be true. Um, Here we have another example, though, to put things into perspective. This house supports a system of blind voting. And an example burden can be: if our team proves to you that the system of blind voting is beneficial, then we win this debate. Now, is this a good or a bad burden? Okay, we have a comment that it's a bad, terrible event. That's exactly true. Um, Usually, when debaters hear about example burdens of proof and when they start doing their own, they really focus on just restating the motion in a way, and just saying, if we prove this, we win this debate. But that's kind of obvious. The reason why this burden of proof is not good is because it doesn't show how or why the motion would be true in any way. So here's another example. This house regrets the trend of celebrities and artists openly supporting politicians. Now, an opposition burden of proof for this side can be: the fundamental reason that we oppose this motion is our belief that celebrities and artists have the basic right to express their opinions and viewpoints on all stances, just as any other individual. Okay, yes, Koyan?
I think that that's another example of a good burden of proof.
Okay, can you tell me why?
I think that they state why they oppose. They state that why they oppose the motion, and I think that they have what you said. They have collected their arguments into one and said why this is the reason why they don't think the motion is true.
Exactly. A burden like that will very easily set up the opposition for their future arguments and just outlining their case, looking at it in the big picture. Um, okay, we are not done though. We have one more motion and two more burdens. We have the motion: this house believes that we care too much about criminals and not enough about victims. And a proposition burden of proof is: on our side, we're going to prove that we should care more about victims and less about criminals. I'm gonna give you like 30 seconds to think about it. You can also get in the comments just a yes or no. No need to elaborate. Okay, we have a comment saying it's bad. We also have Koyan once again raising his hand. Yes, Coco.
I think that that's another burden of proof that just restates the motion, but from the point of view of victims.
Yeah, okay, and we have us here another comment that's bad. This is a bad burden because it doesn't provide how or why the motion should be true if it is. Here we have another burden, though, that might be used for the proposition. We believe that society disregards the trauma and personal experience of the victim in favor of excessively focusing on a criminal's rehabilitation and crime prevention, leading to an inefficient justice system. Yes, Coco.
A much better burden of proof.
Yeah, can you
They
say why?
once again, yeah, they once again say why they believe their side of the argument is correct, and they once again have outlined their case with their burden of proof.
Okay, thank you. Um, yeah, that's exactly true. Good job. We're moving on to the model. The model is also can be a very important element of debate. It's usually used only when debating wood motions, um, because wood motions require an action, and a model is a proposal that needs to be implemented. So why we would need a model is because in those wood motions, we need the action and we need to show it how it's going to actually work in the real world, such as in this example. We have the motion this house would legalize marijuana. And while this might be a good motion to debate, you actually need to prove how, if this happens, how is it actually going to happen and why it's going to be beneficial. Um, so an example model could be our model proposes that the government, I have a typo, the government should pass laws to, and we have the several criteria. Remove the legal prohibition on the use of marijuana, taxing it, requiring health warnings, and yada yada. This way, the proposition sets a believable way of having their case actually work, and giving the opposition little space to be able to tell them that they're unreasonable, because they've proven in a very unreasonable manner that they have thought about the way that they're actually going to implement the legalization of marijuana in this case. Okay, that's the first speech elements. Sounds for the arguments, but we're going to get to them too. Are there any questions so far? Uh, just a second. Yeah, yes, Coco.
I just wanted to make sure if the seminar will be recorded and then posted on the best YouTube channel.
Yes, the seminar is being currently recorded and it's gonna be posted probably tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on, if there aren't any questions, still if there are, you can type them in the chat. Okay, until we get any questions, now I'm gonna ask Katy to come to introduce herself and to talk some about framing.
Well, hello everyone. I am the Kathy in question, and my credentials for being here and doing this seminar is, well, first of all, being a first speeches enjoyer, and I have debated for about 2.5 years now, and yes, I will not really bore you with me, and we will jump straight into the issue of framework. So, give me a second. Can we all can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can.
All right, thank you. And here I want to say I would appreciate it if you guys at any given moment, if you have any questions, feel free to audibly interrupt me. I have absolutely no issue with that. And with or feel free to raise your hand, type them in the chat. I will at some point go back to the chat and like check them. So with that being said, we will be moving to framing and characterization, which, as you can see, are, at least to me, arguably one of the most important elements in a first speech. So what you guys are going to hear in my presentation is, first of all, the strategic purpose of framing and characterization. Then I am going to move on to some common framework mistakes, and I will address two of the framework elements that Borko mentioned previously, the status quo and the stakeholders of a debate. So, starting off with the strategic purposes of framework and characterization, what framework does is, first of all, provide a context to a debate, because a debate motion does not really exist in a vacuum. So what happens is most debate motions are based on real life issues or concepts that we have encountered at some point in a real life. So a framework to a debate is kind of almost like the frame of a picture, in a way that it is the outline of what you need to focus. Another strategic purpose of framework and characterization is by framing the debate in the beginning of your first speech, in the beginning of your case, you are already setting up the world on your side of the house to seem more impactful and important than the world of the opposing team, or you are framework may help you minimize the impact of arguments on the opposing side from the very beginning of a debate. So, any questions about this? I'm going to take the silence as a no and move on to the next slide. Another strategic purpose of framework and characterization is that they provide a specific analysis applicable to an important actor in the debate. Those important actors may be individual actors or groups of people, as well as some large-scale actors such as organizations, corporations, governments, systems, etc. And here I've been for all this time talking about framework and characterization. So here I want to mention that while there is a slight technical difference between framework and characterization, most debaters will only use the term framework. That is perfectly fine. I will address the difference in a bit when I'm talking about actors in a motion. And yeah, moving on. So, individual actors or groups of people. Examples of such actors would be a motion that starts with this house as an average working class citizen, or this house as a member of the feminist movement, or even this house as the feminist movement, or any of the such. Characterization of such actors addresses their values, their priorities, their motivations, and their likelihood to make certain decisions, which may be impacted by their upbringing, their environment, the social context in which they're put in. So, yeah. Here I would like to illustrate everything I'm talking about with examples of motions and how we would be able to characterize an actor. So moving on to the example of a motion that would require characterization of a specific individual actor, it would be this house regrets the narrative that hard work will lead to financial success. Do we have any guesses on who we may want to characterize, who is our main character of the motion, who we need to be talking about? Any guesses? Yes, I see a raised hand. Kaluyan?
I think that the workers, the people who work.
Yes, precisely. In this motion, we would have to characterize the average worker or the person who is, affected by this narrative. So, with that being said, we will move on to our bigger actors or systems. Characterization of such actors as they're not like individual people would address their incentives, the specifics of the system that we're talking about, their target demographics when we're talking about a political actor, let's say, their likelihood to make certain decisions which are also based on their target demographics, as well as we would sometimes have to characterize shorter or long-term tendencies in society, in politics, or in economics. And for our bigger actors, I have, I think, two examples of motions. So the first one being, this house would ban surveillance technology in the workplace. Do we have any guesses on who, which is the actor that may need characterization here? Yes, Kalian?
The group of people who have surveillance in their workplace.
Well, yes, Yanni?
The group of people that have surveillance in the workplace being the workers, along with the company that uses that surveillance on those workers.
Thank you. Precisely. We do need characterization of both the workers and how surveillance technology impacts their workers positively or negatively, depending on which side of the house you are. And you also need characterization of corporations or workplaces that do use surveillance technology. So, for example, you need to, based on your side of the house, provide framing and characterization of what the company's incentive is in regards to, using such technology, with examples of such characterization would be, companies focusing on profit and therefore having the incentive of monitoring their employees and their progress. And yes, and our second example of emotion, this house supports a system of blind voting, with the info slide stating, in a system of blind voting, political parties are not allowed to name or to appoint their politicians before the election. Voters vote on the ideology and policies of a party. Politicians are appointed after the elections. I'm gonna give you maybe about half a minute to think about this motion, and once again feel free to give your suggestions on who we would be characterizing in this motion. Yes, Kalian?
The people who elect the politicians as well as the political parties.
Precisely. That is a great answer. Here we, in most motions where like people are targeted, which is almost every motion, we would to some extent need characterization of the individual average person if it is relevant to the debate. In this motion, however, we do also need characterization of politicians, of their aims once we implement the system of blind voting, how this will impact, the policies that they present to people, how this will impact, the way they connect with their audiences, with their voters. And here I would like to mention that framing is something that I thought it was clear, but I will still have to mention it. Framing is something that both sides of a debate are allowed to do, and both sides of a debate are allowed to base their framing to current events if necessary. However, drawing the logical connections from the events that you are presenting in your framing, or drawing the logical connections, is the thing that is specific to your side of the house and your aim in this debate and what you're supposed to be proving. So, with this, we shall move on to common framework mistakes. As I have already established, all framework has to have some sort of strategic value in a debate. So you have to have a purpose when you're telling me all of this. So what happens with most debaters who are attempting framework for the first time is they either provide me as a judge with excessive details, with not really a lot of strategic value in the debate. So, for example, if we are given a motion with the actor the feminist movement, in framework, you may have to address some of the goals of the feminist movement, but maybe a full historical overview of how the feminist movement was created, how it has progressed throughout the years, would not be entirely necessary, and you would be spending way too much time on that rather than maybe your argumentation. Another common mistake is underdeveloping your framework and missing important analysis. So what that would be is more so not thinking. That happens mostly when debaters don't really think about what is necessary for them to establish within the debate, and therefore just missing the part that is essential to their framework. Another very common mistake is disconnection with the rest of your case, with your argumentation. And what happens, next slide, how do we, avoid all of those framework mistakes? You should always, as a debater, refer back to the core of the motion. So what this motion, what this debate asks of you to prove, and therefore think of, as you're thinking of your goal with the motion for this debate, you will be able to think of your argumentation and your framework and the necessary details to help your argumentation seem even stronger from the start of a debate. Do we have any questions up until this point? Just let me look at the chat. So I see no questions. So I will be moving on to the framework elements that I mentioned I will be talking about. The first one is status quo. The status quo addresses, once again, current events, societal, economic, and political tendencies that are all relevant to the motion in your casework. Once again, I will bring us back to my feminist movement hypothetical motion example. We do not need full historic overviews of an issue when it will not necessarily aid your case. So think of it as almost as a literary piece in the things that we were taught back in literature class. Everything you're saying must have some sort of purpose. So it's with everything you say, you must be doing a little bit of what did the author intend by doing that. Nothing in a debate, nothing in your speech must be pointless for the sake of, filling up time. So here we have an example. This house would significantly restrict short-term homestay rentals like Airbnb. Can somebody tell me maybe what should we be addressing within this motion, which is the issue that is happening in our status quo that this motion asks us to talk about and maybe address in the beginning in our framework. Yes, Kilian?
In the status quo, Airbnbs or short-term homestays like Airbnbs are available for everybody, and this house wants to significantly restrict them.
Not really, no. Yes, Yanni?
In order to kind of solve this basic framing, we have to think about and refer back to the core of the motion, the issue that this motion is presenting. Because Airbnbs have to be bad in some way in order for this motion to exist. And in the status quo, what I believe we should refer to in this motion is the problem of the housing crisis in major cities where Airbnbs are prevalent, because they're taking up spaces where people would be living and artificially raising the rent prices of normal homes.
Precisely. Thank you so much. That is exactly the answer I was hoping I would get. The housing crisis is indeed the current issue that we must address in framework with the specific motion. So, I believe if we have no more questions regarding status quo, I will have to move on to stakeholders. Yes? Okay. Stakeholders, Borko already said this. These are the group, this is the group or the groups of people most affected by the issue we are debating. They may sometimes be the actors in the debate. They may sometimes not be the actors in the debate. An example of such difference would be in our first case where our stakeholders would be also the actors in the debate. We have Borko's previous motion about this house as Bulgaria would leave the European Union or something like this. I'm sorry if I don't remember the precise wording. So essentially in this motion, Bulgaria is both the actor and also Bulgaria and its citizens are the stakeholders in this debate. While, for example, with my motion with surveillance technology, our actor would be the government, so the one implementing the ban on surveillance technology, but the most important group of people, the ones affected by it, would be the workers. So there we have it. And now for our example for a motion for stakeholders. This house believes that standardized tests do more harm than good. I believe it's clear who the stakeholders in this debate are. So if I may have somebody brave enough to answer that. Yes, Kilian?
The students who are taking the tests?
Precisely. The students, and also if we want to take it one step further, we may also, in our casework, look how this issue of standardized tests and may affect like the whole education system. But yes, our main stakeholder for this debate would be the students taking the standardized tests. So for stakeholders, it is very important to remember that not every issue we are debating affects only a certain group of people, or alternatively, if you want to state that your stakeholders in a certain debate are everyone in society, don't say that. I'm not saying there are no debates and no motions where everyone in society is your stakeholder. I'm just saying that if you want to state that, those are wasted 5 to 10 seconds. And you may as well, in your argumentation, more so present me with an impact of how this issue affects everyone in society. But I believe Borko will be talking about argumentation in probably 2 minutes after I'm done with this. So, where should we place the framework in our speech? As I did already state, the framework is the thing that provides us with context to a debate and the thing that sets up our side on a more advantageous position from the very beginning. So preferably it is reasonable to place it before your arguments, and how you place the specific elements in your framework does not really matter, in the sense that there is no set way to do it. It is more so, once again, whatever you feel like has the most strategic value. And it is all important, and it is all to be based on the current debate. As Borko did already state, not every element of framework must be present in absolutely every first speech. And I believe, yes, this is all from me. And before I wrap my speaking portion, I would like to wish all of you present here the best of luck in your debate future. And I am open for questions for one last time before I give it back to Borko. All right, I am taking this as no questions. Borko, back to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kachi. A round of applause from Kachi. That was great. I hope all of you learned a bit more about framing. And if you've never heard about framing before, I hope that now you know more about it and you're going to be willing to include it in your next debates. With that said, we're going to move on to the last but probably most important element in the first speech. That is the arguments. So, share my presentation. All right. Moving on to the arguments. What are arguments? When you have your burden of proof, which is your main point that you're trying to prove, we have the arguments that are distinct points that are individual and support your side of the motion. An argument can be broken down into 4 pieces that you all need to have in order for an argument to work. Those are the claim, the warrant, the example, and the impact. If we are missing any of those 4 elements, we do not have an argument. This is not an argument, this is not an argument, and this is also not an argument. Neither is this. If one of those elements is missing, a judge is very well welcome to ignore your argument and not really be able to judge you, because an argument just cannot be full without them. But now let me explain you all of those elements and what they mean, and give you some examples on how to use them. Starting with the claim. The claim you can think of as the name of your argument. It's just a short and simple statement of what your argument is about. You can also see this in debate strategy guides labeled as label, claim, label, name. Those are all valid names to call it. Then you have the warrant or the analysis. This is the logical and or sometimes abstract explanation of how and why exactly your argument is generally true. Then you have some examples or statistics. The reason why we need this is because we actually need to prove, once we have our framing and once we have our arguments, that our arguments are connected to this framing and they're connected to the real world in some way, and examples help with that. And finally, we have the impact. Impact, that I'd say, is the most important part of an argument, as a lot of people forget it, and therefore their argument is never really full, and it has no weight in the debate most times. Impact is the way the general truth of your argument affects the real world. So we've shown how it's connected to the real world, but now we want to show how it impacts the people in it. The people in it that we're going to be talking about are more often than not the stakeholders that we already talked about. Questions so far on the elements of an argument? Okay, seeing there aren't any, I'm gonna move on. You can always ask in chat. But now we're going to move on to some examples to illustrate you better how those elements work, interact with each other, and how you can write them too. So here is an argument, which is a bit of a self-promotion, so excuse me for that. I'm the marketing coordinator, like I have to. The argument is students should follow BEST's Instagram account in order to be better informed about BEST events. This is our argument. This is the claim of our argument. Now let's move on to what the warrant or the analysis might be. I hope you're seeing the font is a bit small, so I'm gonna, as always, read it out. The warrant is: following BEST's Insta account would lead to students getting notified when BEST posts important news and events regarding tournaments, seminars, and trainings. Students getting notified would mean they would more likely see the news. Seeing these news would mean that they would be aware of those events and therefore be more informed. As you see, this is the logical explanation to why the argument is true. Now we have the example, which is connecting it to the real world. In the past few weeks, BEST has announced several seminars and even a brand new online debate tournament, the Linchka. Applications still open. Students who have not followed BEST Insta account would have no way of knowing that and would not even be here at this current seminar. And now we have the impact. When students know about these events, they can choose on their own volition to participate in those events, such as you right now. Attending those seminars and tournaments will make them learn more about debate theory and will give them the opportunity to practice their skills. This will directly improve their debate skills, making them better debaters. As you see, this is explained a bit as if for toddlers. Usually one sentence can get the meaning of the argument and you can technically understand what it is about. But here what we are trying to do is to convince people that this is generally true in most cases. Therefore, we're trying to be as thorough as possible. And there's another thing. Currently, you're reading this and I'm saying it. But during a debate, you're going to be in a high-stress environment. You're going to be listening to a speaker present their arguments. And you're not going to be able to catch everything they're saying. And your brain is not going to be able to remember everything they're saying. So probably, if a speaker is going to say all this, the judge and the opposition team is going to probably gather just this. The claim being students should follow BEST Instagram account. The warrant: students will get notified when BEST posts new content. The example being BEST has announced several debate seminars and tournaments the past few weeks. And the impact being students will attend these seminars and tournaments and become better debaters. And that's great. And usually how people structure their arguments is like this here. But the problem with this is that as I said, in the high stressful environment, when you're saying all this, the judge is not really going to get all that. So the judge might miss the claim, the warrant, the example, or the impact. The other team might miss it. And that's very important not to happen. That's why we focus on thorough examination of every part of the claim, the warrant, the example, and the impact, so we can make sure that everything from those elements sticks at least a bit for the judge. And we can see how if we were to remove one of those elements, suddenly the argument doesn't make sense. If we have an argument without a name, it would just mean nothing. Okay, students will get notified when BEST posts new content, and those debaters are gonna attend seminars, but like, what should they do? Like, what's the course of action that we should take? We don't have the claim, so we don't know. Here we don't have the warrant, so we can be like, okay, they should do that, but what's the connection between it? Why should they do that? We don't have the example, and we can be, okay, that's a great argument. It has claim, warrant, and impact, but how can you connect this to the real world? Is this really gonna work in the real world? There's no way of knowing. I'd say if you're gonna skip an element, an example is gonna be the one who is gonna hurt your argument the least, but still, it's always bad when you cannot really connect it, and it just stays in the vacuum of the debate. And if you don't have an impact, it's like, okay, I should do that. I get why I should do it. But what's going to happen when I do it? I don't know. So therefore, I don't have any reason to believe that I should do this thing. And with that ends the explanation of how to structure an argument. Once again, I'm going to ask if there are any questions. All right. Then finally, I'm going to go over some general tips and tricks um, for speakers. One very important thing that I tell every first speaker I see, and I see happen a lot during a debate, is a first speaker who does their first speech and after that kind of leaves the debate. I'm not talking generally walking out of the room, but just stopping to take notes or to help their teammates in any way possible. That's a wrong way to handle it. Seeing that you're a part of this team, you should do everything in your power to help the team until the debate is over. And also, you should care about uh, you as a speaker presenting yourself well, and that is not only until your speech, it is until the debate ends. So you can always ask POIs. I always say to speakers, ask 2 POIs, take no more than one. That way you're sure that you're going to be getting at least 2 points. For POIs. Also, help your teammates. Write notes for them. Remind them of stuff they have forgotten. Uh, just be there for them. And also, rely on your teammates. After you're done with your speech, there's probably not much that you can rely on them except for relying on them to do their job as speakers and do their second and third speech and then reply. But you should also make sure you rely on them during the case building. Yes, the job of the first speaker is to present the case, but it's not their job to do the case on their own. So always make sure that you're doing it together as a team, and then you're the one presenting it. Yeah, that was all. Once again, I'm asking for questions. Yes, Coco.
I have a question because I've struggled in the past with the logistics of passing notes.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, as a third speaker, when one of my teammates tries to help me, I do not have the time to go through their notes and take something from their notes that helps me create my speech because of the short time period that I have for that. Uh, can you tell us a way that I can fix that? For example, should it be a universal shorthand that the team uses, or how have you done it in your time as a debater?
Yeah, that's actually a very good question. I'm gonna answer it, and I'm also gonna go to Kati if she has like any advice to give. But what I would advise you to do is first things first. You need to be able to communicate with your team properly, and you need to be able to be very consistent with your team. I always say to debaters that once they're out there, it should feel like there's one speaker talking throughout all speeches, right? That should also kind of work with case writing and to an extent note writing. Therefore, you should kind of, I think it would be very beneficial to talk with your teammates in advance to a way how you can expect the notes you get to be written. Because for them it might make a lot of sense to write them in a certain way, but you have a different brain, you have a different way of processing things. So it's best to like say, um, please write this to me in a full sentence so I can understand it better. Or maybe you don't have time to read, so you want just a keyword. Then maybe talk about potential keywords, how you'd like something to be explained. For example, you might also not do keywords. You can do it color coded, just a way for you to know what the other speaker is expecting you to do, your teammate is expecting you to do. Um, an example to this might be if they give you a note written in red, then it's rebuttal to an argument. If it's in black, then it might be extension to an argument. And that way you can connect it in your brain faster and in the moment during all the stress, and be more able to process it. Katya, do you have
Thank you very
anything
much.
general that you would like to add?
Well, I'm not really the best person to ask that because I don't have the tendency to take notes from my teammates during my speech, and also my teammates don't have the tendency to pass me notes unless it's something very, very big that I'm missing, which I would get about 3 words and like big letters just like raised in the air. So, yes, communicate with your teammates about how you want your notes. That is precisely